in French. And people used some pretty wacky material to make the balls with. Cork, wool, chalk, animal fur and even human hair. A few centuries on, Germany got dead into the tennis too, but wanted to make a few modifications to the ball to make it a bit more effective. Around this time, an American chemist had just created something called vulcanized rubber. Out of that, people started developing air-filled rubber balls, which were properly bouncy, but either red or grey in colour. These were manufactured in Melton Mowbray. That's right, the home of the pork pie. One problem, the balls kept on breaking on impacts with the racket. The call of new balls please seemingly coming over every other point. Step forward English lawyer and tennis enthusiast John Moyer Heathcote, who suggested balls be covered in flannel to stop them from degrading. And thus the modern-day tennis ball was born. But these were white or black, so how did they become yellow? Well, in 1967, the controller of BBC Two, one Sir David Attenborough, decided the corporation should show Wimbledon on colour TV. He got his wish and it was wide into people's homes across the country. The only sticking point, the white balls were nearly impossible to see on the screen. So the International Tennis Federation, sensing an opportunity, started developing a new ball that would be visible even without the need for 4K LED displays. Not that anyone had that in the late 60s. After rigorous testing, they came up with the colour optic yellow and decided every ball be coated in that colour from there on in. And there you have it. Tennis balls are yellow, all because Sir David Attenborough wanted to watch Wimbledon from the comfort of his own front room. You could say the ITF aced it.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome to Sunday Edition, where you're in the company of myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. And it's a special programme this morning because we have a very special guest, the chairman of one of English football's big success stories, Crystal Palace. That is Steve Parish. Steve will be along later to talk about trophy wins, Eze, Gay, Wharton, Glasner, club ownership and the contentious issue of ticket prices. Before that, Henry, who loves a regulator, was granted an audience during the week with the new football regulator, David Cogan. We'll be playing some of that interview and discussing his responses. And of course, we'll be looking at all the home nations and their World Cup hopes. You can get in touch with the show, text us on 81089, WhatsApp us or call us on 03717 223344. We're also live on YouTube and your smart TV. Just search talksport.com/watch for more details. This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT. Morning, Henry.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Went to a very interesting evening last night. I just diversify things at the moment. I went to see Stuart Copeland last night.
Oh, the police.
Indeed.
Not the first time you've seen the police on a Saturday night.
Police. Fascinating. He's on a world tour and he's doing a talk show. And I never knew that... well, I knew his dad was a spy.
Yeah. He's head of the CIA, wasn't he?
I think he was number 2 in the CIA. And his big friend, his best friend when he was a kid, was Kim Philby's son. And suddenly... Mr. Philby disappeared one day for where they were living. I think it was in Lebanon. And up he popped in Moscow. And there he was, a spy, never to be seen again in England.
Did he talk about Walsall Boys Club, where Sting used to play?
He talks quite a bit about Sting, but there are some difficult areas for him, seeing as I think they're suing him at the moment for...
They've called the police in.
They've called the police in over publishing rights. Anyway...
Good, I'm glad you
I diversified off from...
you also had a run-in with the Denver Broncos, is this true?
I was going to bring that up later. Yeah, we were going for a walk the other day and went down the public footpath. It is a public footpath, got stopped by security because there were a load of these fellows crashing into each other on a training pitch, and apparently I may have spied on them and revealed some secrets. I didn't have a clue what was going on. There was about 60-odd blokes crashing into each other and a load of security going, move along, please.
Did they know that you were sports editor of the country's best-selling...
No, they didn't.
Sports tabloid?
Just individual me, just going for a walk.
Didn't you say, well, I've got 3G at home, I can recommend it as well?
You Very good, yes.
Anyway, it's
that's a Henry joke about the artificial grass in a...
But look, welcome back, and welcome back to some fairly impressive back pages today. Where should we start? Sunday Telegraph, Shaun Dyche in frame for Forest, was mentioning on the news.
Where there isn't actually a vacancy at the moment, of course, but we think there might be soon.
And do you think there should be?
Look, it hasn't started well, has it? Let's be honest. And it's understandable why Forest fans are upset, don't you think? Finished the season pretty well, sneaked into the Europa League by hook or by crook. We'll be talking to Mr. Parish about that later on. And they love Nuno. And now they get a bloke who...
Is not an upgrade on it.
Is on a heck of a losing run, give or take a Europa League success.
Yeah. So what does this mean for Marinakis if he has to get rid of someone so quickly?
I think it'd be hard for him, but I think he'll move on quickly from it because it isn't, there's no doubt it isn't working out. But if you go for Dyche, you don't have changed the way you're playing again. Or maybe you go back to the Nuno way, don't you?
You go back to the Nuno. I mean, you look at players like Anderson and Gibbs White and the defence as well, which was so good under Nuno, and they just haven't got that same edge and influence as under
so how many games do we give Postecoglou, do you think?
I'd make the decision now.
Would you really?
Oh, well, I wouldn't. I wouldn't have made the decision anyway.
Time. Bearing in mind he's in, you like to give managers time.
I would have given Nuno time. But the issue was, of course, speaking out against your boss in public. Very unwise. Going to you obviously went in on the Sun yesterday because it's a very strong, eye-catching back page, and it sort of merges the sort of the major stories at the moment. Obviously, with a lot of focus on the international game. Three Lions duo in big demand. Barcelona want Rash to sign permanent deal.
You're going to love that one. You love that one, don't you?
I mean, I think he's still got to prove himself over the whole season, but I absolutely can understand it. If he keeps producing this sort of form, he's obviously back in the England squad. Tuchel likes him. I didn't think he was actually particularly good in the second half for England when he came on, but look, we know what a talent he is, the pace. I think he's understudy to Anthony Gordon in the 26-man England squad when they go to the States, Canada and Mexico. And I also think he's probably number 3 of the strikers. He can play as centre forward. He switched it a little bit in the second half. Anyway, Barcelona want him. I know you're not a huge fan, but clearly he's a huge talent.
I'm a fan of him when he's consistent, not when he's inconsistent.
I think you can say that about most players. And all talking of inconsistent
about Harry Kane. Harry Kane is consistent.
Absolutely.
All the time.
Yeah.
So that's what I want from a player like Marcus Rashford, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, well, Harry Kane is absolutely the standard bearer in all this. Talking of players who actually, Morgan Rogers has not had the best of start for Aston Villa, as they would say this season, but superb for England and exclusive by Neil Moxley, who knows the Midlands inside out. Villa keen, Rogers pens improved new contract, less than 12 months after signing his last one. And look, if he goes to the World Cup, I mean, we could spend hours discussing Jude Bellingham. I think in the big games, you've got to have Jude Bellingham number 10. I just don't think any other country in the world would look at a talent like Jude Bellingham, who's playing for Real Madrid, who's won what he's won, who's got the personality to dominate big games and to dig teams out of holes as he did for England against Slovakia in the... You're tutting. Are you not a...
I was going to bring that up in the next section.
Oh, okay.
When we talk about it. However...
Okay, but it's tied in with Rodgers, because Rodgers has got his position.
There's a heck of a lot of players who now need squeezing into that England squad, who once again you think should be in there, and we end up.
No, I would have Jude Bellingham
with a squad.
I think England's front six should pick itself.
Well, they're
Should we do a
As I
section
say,
on
we'll
that?
do a section on that coming up.
Okay, very.
Then I watched a bit of this yesterday, the Super League Grand Final, which gets a bit of a show on the back of our paper, certainly. Thrill of Hull KR's first title since 1985.
And rightly so. I mean, the scoreline doesn't necessarily reflect the intensity of the game. Hull KR 24, Wigan Warriors 6. But just the physicality and the pace and the strength of these people. I mean, I just think it's just whenever you watch it, you just it just leaves you speechless with the intensity and the.
And Wigan will be kicking themselves a little bit because they threw it away at the start. Really, they 2 open goals, we'd call them, really easy chances for tries off great moves, and blew it. Failed to touch down one of them. And the other one dropped the ball when he was through, and it allowed Hull KR to come back.
Can I ask you, as a sports editor, whether rugby league gets the show that it deserves?
Well, it does in our paper and it does in the Mirror.
Yeah. Right.
Because I'm a northern sport, and it is a northern sport. Let's be honest; they'd love it to be more nationwide, but it isn't. But I think it does. Things like the Grand Final, Challenge Cup Final get good shows, and we give coverage to league games as well, and long may it continue, because I think it's a great sport, actually. I just can't work out why it can't get a hold of the whole country. It's just never been able to do it.
Officials, by and large, is great. They're role models. Whenever they get interviewed, they seem a pretty humble, down-to-earth bunch. So,
anyway, well done to Hull KR.
Yeah, just very quickly, I know it's on the back page, and you're a stickler for back pages, but Ollie Holt, chief sports writer of the Mail on Sunday, is not on the back page, but it should be. It could be on the front page. It's basically about all his fallouts with well-known sporting people, including like Jean Alesi. He wrote a story about him, and then Jean Alesi a couple of years later, this is an F1 when Ollie was covering F1, did an interview with him, all lovey-dovey interview, everything was fine, and at the end of it, Jean Alesi pinned him up against the wall and said, "What you wrote about me and his then girlfriend, now wife."
2 years earlier.
2 years earlier, they don't forget. So, I mean, we all know Ollie, and he fights his corner, and he doesn't pull his punches in anything that he writes. Anyway, so he's now done a list of I've had a Manchester United legend call me, I can't use the word, and an X-rated barb from Fergie.
We've all had some of those.
Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah,
Ollie's been on a bit of a roll actually this week. He's been detailing a few of his bust-ups.
Which are the ones?
He did the Tyson Fury one.
Yeah.
The other day, did somebody else as well? I'm trying to remember.
Bellingham's dad
as well, a couple of weeks ago. It seems like Ollie argues for most people, actually, but it's very entertaining.
It's brilliant. And I mean, when Ollie eventually writes his memoirs, it's going to be a fascinating insight into sports, because he's covered a range of sports, but also into Ollie and
the thing
his
is
interviewing techniques.
Yeah, but I mean, we can all relate to certainly some of these, because we've all had run-ins with, even you have run-ins
I've
with
had
some
run-ins,
of the,
I've had a few.
some famous people as well. They take exception. They sometimes make up with you, sometimes they never do.
I've found that if you have a falling out with someone and they obviously want to have a go back at you, they have a go back. At the end of it, you say, "You've made really good points. I think it's time we took this to a broader audience. When can we do a sit-down interview?"
That's Ollie's trick.
Which is brilliant, and it's obviously worked. And he's had some of his best. Also, his interview with Craig Bellamy early in the week was excellent. So he knows Craig very well, obviously having written his book. So it's great stuff. So that is, even though it's not on the back pages, it is definitely worth delving inside. On pages 90 and 91 of the Mail on Sunday, and it could have preceded the 30 pages before, because Ollie's had a few rocks.
He certainly has. This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT, and next up we'll be talking England, Wales, and all the international news.
points at stake, but there are points to prove.
Very pleased with the first half. We could have been 4 or 5-0 up.
Perfect start for England. They're ahead inside 2.5 minutes. Morgan Rogers, who kept his nerve to siphon into the bottom left-hand corner.
It's what you dream of as a kid. It's things that strive you to work hard and to get into this position. So yeah, it's a lovely feeling.
It's played across the face of goal for Watkins, who cannot miss.
We've seen what this environment was. Now, we're not quite there, of course. But to me, if I'm being honest, this gives me hunger.
Saka turning it onto his left foot. Oh, it's a beautiful goal.
And that is one of the best goals I have ever seen in this stadium. An incredible finish.
No, it felt good when it left my foot, and obviously when I looked up and I saw where it was, great feeling.
So we imposed ourselves physically and then also with our quality, of course. So that's why I'm very happy.
The feeling remains that England are certainly moving in the right direction. They've beaten Wales tonight by 3-0.
Yeah, that was how England 3, Wales 0 sounded on talkSPORT on Thursday night. England take on Latvia on Tuesday night, a World Cup qualifier. That'll be live on talkSPORT. But Tickle, Henry, you won't like this. He was critical of the England fans against Wales. And I do wonder if it's not just a consequence of a friendly, but when you're 3-0 up after 20 minutes, it's hard to generate that edge of the seat enthusiasm maybe for the fans.
There's one thing which people really haven't highlighted is the cap padding, as it's called, that goes on. Whereas a lot of the hardcore England fans, home and away, those who are going to be backing England in huge numbers at tournaments, they go to these games because you get points as members, which then gives you more access or greater access to the tickets for the big tournaments. Right. Okay, so they go along, and once they've got basically shown that they've gone to the game, they then get their points.
Go to the pub?
Well, some do. So absolutely. So I know some travel club members who absolutely do. But look, the Block 109 boys behind the goal, they are, they were there pretty much to the end and supporting. And then another thing which people haven't pointed out was the Club Wembley. Club Wembley after half-time, that inner ring, which obviously sucks a lot of the atmosphere. I know you're a regular in the corporate world there, but actually that sucks and drains a lot of the atmosphere and the noise away, because it kind of sort of splits the two sections of fans above and below, and a lot of them didn't reappear and had sort of
and behind the dugout as well, which is always empty just after half-time, no matter what the situation in the game. That didn't seem to fill up at all again.
No, I mean, fair play to the Welsh fans. Well, there's 7,000 of them, and they were fantastic throughout.
I'm not sure what the tickets prices were.
They weren't the FA, to be fair to them. They're not Premier League prohibitive, nasty levels. There were issues with the Metropolitan line. Jason Burt did a piece in the Telegraph the day after, or actually on the night, talking about their issues with the Metropolitan line. So there were issues. The other issue is friendlies should be played around the country.
Oh, yeah, I knew you were going to say that one again.
Well, I've always said it, and I know you sort of poo-poo, and it's easier for you to get to Wembley, but maybe it's because I live in the Midlands, or maybe, I'll say it, there must be people where you came from in Newcastle. There must be loads of kids there who would love to have
England games up there.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, before the Euros, you had the game there. But why not more? Why not more friendlies around the country? And why not have Oasis and Coldplay? The FA need Wembley to generate the money. I understand that. But if you have concerts on 6 nights, why not then go and play 6 friendlies around the country?
I do often wonder, though, if it's the fans' job to make sure that the team performs well. For instance, when you buy a ticket, does it say on your ticket, you must make sure you cheer and shout and holler, otherwise we might not win and then it'll be your fault?
It's a relationship, Shaun. It's, both spark the other off. The fans get behind, a big tackle early in the game gets the fans going, but the fans also beforehand are building up the atmosphere before ball's even been kicked.
Was it a good performance?
20 minutes was
20
fantastic.
Minutes, great. But then...
First half good, second half not so good, dear Odsford.
But we do... You can't help but lose a bit of enthusiasm for the game. Once they're 3-0 up, and actually should have been 4, let's be honest, Ollie Watkins hitting the post with his knee obscured the fact it was an absolute sitter, didn't it?
But he scored, he got back into the swing of things. A lot of doubts about Watkins. I mean, we both talked to him down the years. He's such a interesting, engaging character that you want him to do well. Plus, also, there is a drop-off between Harry Kane as England's leading centre-forward and whose first change, as it were, particularly if you're only playing one up. Tony seems out of the equation. Solanke injured. Obviously, Mason Greenwood ruled himself out for very obvious reasons. And then Rashford probably will go as a third striker as well as second left winger. So, there are... I probably left someone out. Sorry, Liam Delap. When Liam Delap is fit. But then the thing about Tuchel is not here for a long time. He's here for a good time. He's here for the next 9 months, and then we move on. He won't be interested in blooding Liam Delap.
You touched on Jude Bellingham earlier on, and for somebody who wasn't actually there, he dominated a lot of the conversation.
And rightly so, because he's such an important player.
Well, people keep saying, oh, well, he's bound to be in the squad. I kept hearing the commentators, I think it was Sam the other night, saying he's bound to be in the squad. He'll be going to the World Cup. We keep assuming this, but... do you think, honestly, that Tuchel has just given him a little shot across the bows? There's no room for, if you like, people who think they're the best in this squad.
I wrote a column on this during the week about actually how Tuchel and Bellingham have actually got similar qualities, because there is a little bit of the who else element to Tuchel. He does love himself. He isn't a natural team player. I mean, he tends to fall out with people at all the clubs, certainly 4 of the clubs that he's been at. But I actually think it's a little bit harsh, all this sort of narrative about Bellingham's attitude. I mean, you heard him speak, was it yesterday on World Mental Health Day? And he spoke very powerfully about, he is flesh and blood. He does have insecurity. We forget he's only 22. I think he's a special player. And Shaun, you and I have been to enough tournaments when we've needed... Gazza's in on Jim's programme tomorrow, and there were calls for Gazza to be left out before Euro 96, obviously for completely different reasons. He dug England out of holes. Players like Jude Bellingham not only have to be in the squad, but they have to be in the team. And I just don't like this kind of narrative that's building up around him that he's not a team player. The younger players wanted him as their leader in Southgate's 4-man leadership group at 21. He is England's Player of the Year, voted for by the fans. So I take your point about Tuchel maybe just wanted to send a message. But actually, if you look at Tuchel's argument for leaving him out, he wanted to report. He felt he was fit enough to report. Tuchel basically said, well, he's got to be sort of playing. How much had Saka been playing? Saka obviously has to be in the squad, but he hasn't been playing that regularly for Arsenal, for injuries. So anyway, so it's a little bit of stand up for Jude, I think, is required.
But it's not just him. You would want to shoehorn in Grealish, Bellingham, Foden, Wharton into this squad, and I'm beginning to think that's not going to be possible.
Well, I think, no, but there's a debate about the squad, particularly if it's a 26-man squad, and I would rather take an attacking style player as a sort of an extra. But I think England's front six picks itself. Anderson, I've been banging on about Anderson even before your lot sold him. Obviously with Declan Rice, because Declan Rice bombs on. You've got Gordon probably on the left, Saka completely on the right, Kane with Bellingham playing off. And that is a strong front six.
We mustn't forget about Wales, because although they didn't perform particularly great against England, they do have a massive game coming up against Belgium, and ran them so close last time out. And judging by how they performed the other night, it's difficult to see how they will beat them.
Yeah, it was on the hour or 65 minutes that Craig started rotating and resting some of the players, and I hope they are fresh, because he's done an amazing job, Craig Bellamy.
He has, and we do wish him all the best for the game against Belgium. And Scotland are back in the game as well. Steve
Clarke breaks Craig Brown's record of 71 caps as Scotland's longest-serving manager. And it's fantastic what Steve Clarke has done. And, I mean, you and I were there in France 98, the Brazil game. Scotland were fantastic. Opening game of the tournament. Be brilliant. And they've not played in a World Cup since 98. It'd be great to see them back.
And it is, of course, easier to get in it these days.
That's a bit patronising.
Well, it is. It's a fact. It's not patronising. It's a fact. It's easier to get into the World Cup now.
They're not in the easiest group.
No, they're not, but it is easier to qualify.
Okay.
Well, that's just a fact.
Will the Sun have a Scotland reporter?
It certainly will.
There you go.
Certainly will. Coming up next on Sunday Edition, we'll be focusing on the football regulator and his considerable in-tray. This is Sunday Edition with myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter. Don't forget, coming up at 11 o'clock, it's Crystal Palace Chairman Steve Parish. But before that, we're switching our attention to the Football Regulator and the fact that Henry this week had a sit-down interview with David Cogan after he was appointed new chairman of the Regulator. Just before we get into that interview, Henry, how come it's him? Why was he the choice? And also, I keep saying he's the Football Regulator, but he's actually chair of the Regulator. So is there like lots of little regulators who work for the regulator?
I mean, I think there are 30 people who've been working as the shadow regulator in Manchester already. And I think it will be 2 or 3 times that, because you look at what they've got to do with it, keep the licensing of football clubs in terms of, are they financially sustainable? I mean, like you, Shaun, I think instinctively I'm not a fan of regulation. We've seen it not particularly work in other spheres of modern life. But I just think when you look at some of the owners, look, there are plenty of good owners in this country, and we're about to talk to one in the second half of the programme in Steve Parish. But, we've had so many fans groups on this programme who have highlighted the issues at their club, Morecambe, Sheffield Wednesday. So I do think we need a regulator, because I don't think the Football Association are strong enough, and they might argue it's not their remit, although they're supposed to be custodians. The Premier League, for all Richard Masters' sort of hard work of keeping sort of 20 truculent school children crossing a road together, it can be difficult. I just think that they need some help. And so anyway, his background is he was a media rights expert, and he's worked with the Premier League, he's worked with the EFL, he knows a lot of people, Spurs fan, sporting background, not huge, he was a good county level sprinter, he's 68, he's quite a character, hardworking, gets up very early. It's going to be, he's supposed to be 3 days a week, but it's going to be 7 days a week when you, as you say, he's overflowing in tray. So, he's needed.
Right. Well, let's start with something that exercises every fan's interest, and that's ticket prices. And David Cogan revealed whether the independent regulator can help cap prices.
Unfortunately, those people, one of the things in this job I'm learning is everybody believes that we have a remit in every conceivable area of football, be it meat pies, be it ticket prices, be it whatever. We don't. We can't directly get involved in ticket prices. What we can do is understand how the clubs, the fans themselves within clubs are getting involved in that issue, because clubs now have a right, actually they have a duty to consult fans on issues such as that. So our job is to facilitate the fans in an individual club having a direct issue or a direct involvement with the club on an issue like that.
Well, that's absolutely brilliant. He can't do anything about ticket prices, which is one of the things as a fan you say, great, that's why we need a regulator.
But it's not part of the remit.
Yeah.
The remit, but what it is part of his remit, and the legislation which is finally sort of being enacted, is to give the fans in individual clubs greater say, and there will be pressure on owners and clubs to listen to fans more. So this is part of the fan engagement. So look, you'll be covering it this week. The fan engagement elements of the IFR will be announced, and it shows that they've got to work closely and more closely with fans. And if they don't listen to fans' concerns, and we've seen the protests all over the country at all levels about, or certainly in the Premier League, about ticket prices, then they are answerable to the IFR. And the IFR, because they do have fairly strong legislation which they can put pressure on clubs to listen to fans more properly.
But you assume, say, in all these cases, when they say he's going to listen more to fans and give fans more say, that all fans think the same way. Obviously, you don't want ticket prices, you want cheap ticket prices. But I've even seen with my club over the years, Newcastle, there's about 6, 7, 8 different fan groups who all protest about something, but have different ways of wanting to do it, don't always have the same agenda. So I think we're wrong to assume all fans think the same way.
But one of the things that all fans have in common is that they want more communication and more transparency from their clubs. They want to be genuinely listened to. And
yeah, but we've heard with West Ham, which has dominated quite a few of our shows, where they come on, some are okay with the ground, some hate the ground, want to go back to somewhere they can't go back to, and they tear each other apart sometimes.
Yeah, but also some of the West Ham protests have actually made a difference, and Karen Brady, I think, has listened to elements of their complaints. Basically what the regulator does, and David Cogan and others will do, is just be a conduit almost between fans and clubs, and just say to clubs, it actually makes sense to listen. I don't get the impression David Cogan is going in there to fight wars. I think because of his connections with Richard Masters and Rick Parrott at the EFL, he will try and work. Everyone's saying this is very adversarial relationship between the regulator and the and football, but it's not, because he knows them. I mean, he's one of the reasons why the Premier League is financially so successful, because he was a brilliant media rights advisor to Richard Scudamore from 1999 onwards. So I think he's a good choice. and he's a sensible choice because he's a sensible individual who loves the game, but he can also see the issues with the game. And he is prepared, because he's now got this rather large legislative big stick in the background, he can affect change. And as everyone says, change is coming. And even the Premier League has acknowledged that.
And he's a regular listener to this show, apparently, Henry. Which is nice.
Oh, well, I hope so. I think a lot of people in football are, just by some of the messages when they come off
yes. Not all of them positive at times.
Certainly not yours.
David also gave his thoughts on Sheffield Wednesday and Delphon's Chancerised ownership and just what exactly the regulator can do.
We've talked to the supporters groups, not the staff. I think you can assume that, I am spending a substantial amount of time, as are my colleagues, talking to supporters groups, talking to the EFL, talking to the politicians, obviously, who are involved in this as well. The Secretary of State said at the Select Committee, I think, change is coming. Anybody who's looked at our first round of consultations from 4 weeks ago can see it was very clearly aimed at existing owners. We now need to wait for the process to unveil through the House of Commons, and change is coming. And listen, I said to somebody earlier today, Sheffield Wednesday is not just any club. People outside of football don't really understand this. Sheffield Wednesday was a founder club of the original league. Sheffield Wednesday was also a founder club of the Premier League, which actually I think a bit people actually forget. Sheffield Wednesday is not simply a club that is in difficulty. Sheffield Wednesday is a fundamental part of the fabric of football in this country. Clearly, anybody who's interested in football, certainly the chair of the IFR, has a direct interest in ensuring that Sheffield Wednesday is given as much protection as possible. But I have to work within the powers that I've got and when I get them, and that's what we're now working on. I don't want to preempt what our action would be, but the truth is we've now done that consultation. There needs to be secondary legislation laid in the House of Commons, which it will be. The moment that legislation goes through and we get our powers, we have the right then to investigate any club about which we have concerns. I think one can assume we have concerns in this particular case, and at that point we'll make a judgment about our actions. But our actions under the legislation are quite clear. We have the authority and power, ultimately, to take direct action about the ownership of the club.
Were you and David writing each other's scripts? Change is coming, he kept saying. Change is coming. And that's a mantra that you keep repeating when it comes to regulator.
Because it's...
But is he? I'm still not clear what he can do about Chancery, or what the regulation team can do about Chancerised ownership.
Okay, so... Well, there are two elements to this. Certainly, and this is particularly because it's quite difficult with owners who are already in place, but in terms of the expanded, the owners and directors test at it's known, it's now includes sort of executives as well. That, which has sort of gone through Parliament, that is far stronger now in terms of the individuals who can get in. But what and all fans are being crying out for is that you can get an owner like Chancery comes in, and he looks absolutely fine. But what is needed is the checks along the way, the constant checks. Are you financially viable? Are you going to pay the wages? Or are you going to completely rely on an amazing individual and person like Barry Bannon just to sort of help guide the club through? And the pressure should be on owners on a constant basis to prove their worth. And that is the change through legislation.
But does he have the right, say like the police saying, we'd like you to come into the station tomorrow for an interview, does he have the right to say to Chancery, I want to see you tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock? Does he have that right?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah. He will do, absolutely.
Is it in legislation now?
It's the one that's going through. And that's the slight frustration. A few people have been raising this over the years. The slight frustration with the length of time it's taken for his appointment. And I understand, obviously, Sir William Shawcross, without getting too technical, Sir William Shawcross has been looking into it. Is he a Labour crony appointment because he's made donations to Keir? Sorry, he is the Director of Public Appointments within the House of Commons. I'm sure he's your regular reading matter, Shaun. So just to prove that everything is above board in his appointment, even though the process towards appointing him began under the Conservative government, then there was one of those elections. Anyway, but yeah, so the fact that there has been this delay has caused problems for Sheffield Wednesday fans because, he is the sheriff going into the Wild West of English football. He is needed to bring people together. And he can say to Chancery, right, I'm sorry, you have to be accountable.
When does he actually start?
He started on Tuesday.
He started on Tuesday. Well, he should have been around there Wednesday morning, shouldn't he?
He was speaking to them. He was speaking to them before Tuesday, to be fair.
Oh, good. Good news for Sheffield Wednesday fans, maybe. This is Sunday edition on talkSPORT, and there'll be more from David Cogan next on the Glazers and overseas ownership.
Throws the ball to the end zone. Cortland goes up, makes the catch. Touchdown, Denver. Fires one deep right side for Garrett Wilson. He's got it inside the right pylon. Wings one end zone. Caught. Devontae Adams. Touchdown, LA. This is going to be Brian Thomas Jr. to the 5. Brian Thomas Jr. into the end zone. Caught. Touchdown. Are you kidding me with that catch? Justin Jefferson. Give to Judkins. Pushing. Touchdown. Quinshon Judkins.
It's special for everybody to get to come to the United Kingdom and see, hopefully, a very competitive football game.
The NFL is back in London, and talkSPORT 2 will bring you exclusive live commentary of this Sunday's game between Denver Broncos and the New York Jets at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. You'll also be able to see the team if you head to our talkSPORT USA YouTube channel, as they will be hosting a live watch-along from the stadium with plenty of extra content. That's the Denver Broncos versus the New York Jets live over on talkSPORT 2 this afternoon from 2 o'clock. And in addition to watching on YouTube, you can listen to talkSPORT 2 on your DAB, via the talkSPORT app, or simply ask your smart speaker to play talkSPORT 2. And I can vouch for the fact that the Denver Broncos are very, very big lads, but I can't tip off the New York Jets about what they were doing in their practice plays, even though I bumped into it and watched it because I didn't have a clue what was going on. But they look in good shape, those Broncos boys, I've got to say.
A slightly unorthodox spying mission by yours.
It slightly was, because it was a waste of time.
How does it compare with spying on England, Shaun?
Well, you would know best. You were the ace spy when it came to
Did you go up
on
a
the
tree?
England football team. No, but I was moved along, as I mentioned earlier, by security guards who were worried I was studying all the secrets. Anyway, back to Henry's interview with David Cogan, where we're talking pushback on the Regulator, overseas owners and the overseas game. So he spoke about just how the Regulator will look at new owners taking over.
Whenever we move into the discussion about new owners coming into clubs, we have the absolute right and we have greater powers than both the EFL and the Premier League to investigate the background and history of those owners and to look at the way in which they have acted in terms of other things they've done. But just to be really clear, our job is not to fail owners who are going to use debt. Debt is implicit, as you know, but anyway, debt is absolutely explicit in vast numbers of clubs in the English game. We're not there to declare that clubs can't have debt. We're not there to declare clubs have to be profitable. What we have to be certain about is the long-term financial viability and security of those clubs, which is a different issue. So what we need to be assured about, I'm not going to mention any particular owner, is are they giving long-term commitment? What's the 3-year business plan? What's the nature of where they see monies coming in? And what's their risk assessment of their own businesses? But that doesn't mean they actually can't use debt. So the answer to your question is it depends on the way in which they wish to use it. If you read the legislation, we are not in any way capable of judging the state ownership of clubs. Our remit is financial regulation and stability and solidity of the monies that are there. So essentially, that got changed when the legislation was changed under this government to take away the foreign trade element of the legislation. So my job is quite clear on this. We have got to assess people in terms of their fiscal viability and their long-term commitment to the club.
Now, when we had Karen Brady on this show, the Vice Chair of West Ham, she made it pretty clear she wasn't a huge fan of regulation, but accepts that they've got to work with Regulator now. But David Cogan did have his say on the Premier League attempting to push back against the Regulator.
The battle is over. The battle to stop us being created is over. What we're now engaged in is how we're all going to work together and how we're going to use our powers and to do what we need to do. But we can do that in association and collaboration with both the Premier League and the EFL. And ultimately, they have to do it in collaboration with one another. And I think, the dynamic has changed when you have the Regulator getting involved. I think that it's interesting, when I look back to the period between 1999 and 2015, which was my involvement with the Premier League, and one of the things that was so striking was that in 1999, most of the people who chaired Premier League clubs, or Chief Executive Rick Parry, as he was at Liverpool, had been there in the creation. They'd been there only 8 or 9 years earlier when the Premier League started. And although they fought like, cat and dog about everything, actually, when it came down to it, they believed in the concept of the Premier League. To use names that I hope some of your audience remember, Ken Bates might fight with David Dean, Chelsea against Arsenal, against one another. But when it came to actually belief in the Premier League as a concept, they created it, so they believed in it. And that made Richard Scudamore's job, brilliant man as Richard is, more easy because he knew he could depend on that level of support.
OK, myself, Karen, a few others, we're going to have to accept, as David Cogan says, that you've lost the battle. David's won. Regulation is here. Again, on new owners, is he going to be able to interview every new owner that comes in, sit them down, go right through their financial records, ask them what their plans are for clubs coming in, and monitor them, if you like, all the way through their tenure?
As he says, he'll have more powers than the Premier League and the EFL.
Where's the fit and proper person test now? Is that scrapped? Is it just passed on to the
Premier will have their own, but I mean, this is a far stronger one.
Yeah, but why do you need two? I don't understand. If the regulator's going to vet, is the regulator actually going to vet each new owner first? Do you know that?
There will be an element of that, absolutely.
So what's the point of the fit and proper persons test then?
Because I think you've been saying it for years. It's obviously not working. So I just think we need to have stronger scrutiny. I think it's also important that owners know that they are being scrutinised on a more regular basis. I mean, basically, he's about sustainability, unity and transparency. And I think those are all qualities that English football could do with more of. Because we don't want to see any clubs risking with oblivion. I mean, football on the whole is fairly resilient, but you just don't want to risk the future of these clubs. The game clearly needs unity. The Premier League board meetings, it sounds like almost civil war at times. There's obviously a standoff between the Premier League and the EFL. And I think we need more transparency and communication between clubs, between boards and supporters, who are the lifeblood of the game. I don't think anyone can sort of dispute the importance of those three elements.
No. But you talked about fan engagement, etc. So say I'm a Man United fan. Can I ring up the regulator and say, I'm not happy with the Glazers. Can you go and do something about it, please?
Well,
we don't like the way that they loaded death onto the club, for instance. And David Cogan seems not to like that, even though he indicates he'd have to accept it. Is that right?
Yeah, because debt is a part of modern business. I don't think you can stop it. So the question I asked him was, would you allow another Glazer-style payment in kind, the PIC element, with a future owner? And he said, well, listen, it's not our job to sort of say how the money is generated. I think they will look closely at the provenance of the money, but you cannot stop debt.
But I think if you listen to this interview, and he's got very good intentions, there's no doubt about it, but I still think we're not really clear what teeth he's got, how much he's going to get involved, whether he gets involved in the things we really want him to get involved in. He'll get bogged down by red tape.
In my own very sort of small-minded way, I said, listen, the Sheffield Wednesday situation is a little bit like you being a centre-forward at a new club. You need that early goal. He needs to sort out Chansiri, and whether that's encouraging him with a big stick or a kind word to sell up and move on and allow this famous great community club to breathe again, for players and staff to be paid again, for fans to actually stop their boycott and want to go back and watch the club they love. Absolutely have to do that. And if that's communicating with Chansiri, who's not communicating with anyone at the moment,
no.
Okay? So if the one bit of the legislation is that Chansiri has to answer a phone call from England, then great.
Well, what about state ownership then? Can you ring up the Saudis and say, not very happy?
Well, he touched on that because I asked him about state ownership. I said, where we are with state ownership? And he said, well, actually, it's not in his remit. Particularly...
Goodness me, come on. That's one of the big things that we need to address, isn't it? Whether state ownership should be getting involved in our clubs, even though my club's got state owners, obviously.
Yeah, well, I think there was that issue. I mean, I don't know how anyone was naive enough to actually put it in the regulators, the legislation when it was going through Parliament, that they had to effectively take into account foreign policy. I mean, that would scramble FIFA going, actually, that is state interference in football, and it is a fine line there. So that has been taken out. So, yeah, they can look into it.
I wonder, maybe in 6 months' time, if we can catch up with them again, maybe on the show, and see if what has been achieved. Do you expect big things, or is it baby steps?
Well, it's baby steps. Well, it's fairly important steps. I would say the future of Sheffield Wednesday isn't a baby step. I would say that is a major issue, and it is absolutely setting the tone.
Next up, we'll be talking to one of football's great successors, Crystal Palace chairman Steve Parish. He'll be here in the studio.
away from the game, and there are a few big surprises. First up, from rainbow flicks to pancake flips. Ex-Chelsea and Southampton defender Ken Monku switched up his footballing career to buy a Dutch pancake house. He bought out the shop, which had been his favourite pancake spot as a child, and before long he was mixing the batter and getting behind the stove. Next, Everton legend Thomas Gravesen swapped out the high stakes of the Premier League for those of the poker room. He made over 150 appearances for the Toffees and won the Scottish Premier League with Celtic. Turned out the Danish international was pretty darn good at poker. He racked up a reported £100 million from his Las Vegas adventures. Remember former Chelsea goalkeeper Petr Cech? Turns out football nets weren't the only goals he was pretty handy in front of. After retirement, he became a goaltender in ice hockey. Same skills, very different surface. And he even won a Division 2 title with Guildford Phoenix. For ex-Liverpool centre-back Daniel Agger, it wasn't just fancy footwork that was in his blood. He was also pretty good with his hands. The Denmark international turned to tattoo artistry after he hung up his boots. He'd qualified as a skin artist while at Anfield, and he then became the co-owner of his own tattoo company as well. It's not all glamour for ex-pros, though. 1966 World Cup winner Ray Wilson set up a very different kind of business. He became an undertaker after he retired. Finally, not many people can say they've won both a World Cup and starred in an Oscar-winning film. In fact, there's only one person in the entire world who can say that. Frank Leboeuf, the former Chelsea defender, was part of the 1998 France squad who won the World Cup. He ended up marking Brazil's Ronaldo in the final and helped his side to a 3-0 win. But Leboeuf had already begun acting on the side while he was playing football, and his biggest role came some years after his retirement when he landed the part of a doctor in the Stephen Hawking biopic The Theory of Everything.
I embrace the career of acting, so I want to learn more. So seeing lots of movies is a part of my job.
To be honest, with all the dramatic diving in the game these days, there's probably tons of ex-pros who've got the acting skills to make it in Hollywood.
Yeah, this is Sunday Edition, and now we are joined this hour by a very special guest.
Because the 10 minutes are up, and the Eagles have landed it. Crystal Palace win the FA Cup for the very first time.
And Crystal Palace are in complete command here.
And Crystal Palace celebrate. They win the Community Shield with a fantastic penalty from Justin Devenny.
For a lot of these Palace players, it's like a weight's been lifted off their shoulders.
Yeah. And is this the corner turn?
Yes, we are joined by Crystal Palace chairman and co-owner Steve Parish for the next hour. I'm delighted to welcome you, Steve.
Afternoon, how are you?
Well, it's still the morning, I think.
Morning, no, sorry,
yeah,
morning.
Still the morning. One of the reasons we wanted to get Steve back, and we've been badgering him since the start of the season, and he finally said, come in, which is brilliant, is that start of last season, you were such a great guest for us, and I had a lot of feedback, and you were talking about the difficulties of owning Palace, etc., and what you were up against. Who would have thought that at the end of that season, you end up winning the FA Cup, then went on to win the Community Shield? I mean, what an amazing year you've had.
Incredible. Yeah, really incredible. I don't remember, I was probably worried about relegation, I would imagine, at that time. But, look, we found a new positivity. I said to the fans at the end of that season that we would try and win them a trophy. and with Oliver and with the players who are, you know, incredible, we managed to win 2, which was fantastic.
But I'm not sure anybody believed that you would, because, you know, Palace aren't traditionally a trophy-winning club, and I know I'm a supporter of a club that's not traditionally wins many trophies, one in 70-odd years. But did you truly believe it when you sat here? Because I think we spent a bit of time when we sat here talking about Mark Gahey and me expecting him to go within the next 2 weeks and you digging in, and you kept him and you've still kept him. But you did lose, like, Elite, for instance, a big player at your club. Yet you've managed to replace these players and seemingly gone from strength to strength.
Yeah, look, I mean, as far as winning something, I mean, when I arrived, you know, I wanted to win the FA Cup. You know, I wrote on the morning of the final that it was an ambition, I think, since I was a small boy, and we got to the semi-final when we were in the 3rd division. So, you know, we came so close twice before, once when I was here. And in some ways, you know, we made a run at it the first time, you know, under Alan, you know, buying great players, but, you know, slightly towards the end of their career, you know, in Johan and Christian and Mamadou. And we kind of suffered for that for a while. You know, we had to rebuild after, you know, we didn't sell any of those guys for any money. You know, they did great service for us, but, you know, it's not a great strategy for a club like us to do that. So, you know, we took a long time to rebuild, and then COVID, and, you know, it was kind of a grind getting through that period. And then obviously we managed to rebuild, you know, with younger players, younger talent, 2 or 3 years for those guys to get up to speed in the league. And then Oliver came along, and as I've said repeatedly, you know, there have been people on my journey with the club that have come in and just taken us to another level, you know. So, I mean, when Dougie came in, I think I was tired, I was flagging a little bit, and he brought a new energy to the club, you know, and reinvigorated things and you know, brought a different viewpoint to recruitment. And then, of course, Oliver came in and has just been sensational. You know, he brought his winning mentality, his desire and his true belief that he can win. You know, his process, his thinking. And of course, gradually everybody, you know, went along with him and really believed that we could do the impossible, and we did it.
Just with the cup final, is the emotion for you in that split second when the final whistle goes to do with you being a fan and that simple sporting joy? Or is there also, as a co-owner and a chairman, the significance of it?
I think first and foremost, in that moment, you're a fan, aren't you? You know, I mean, and I think what was extraordinary for me was what it meant to everybody. It was an incredible outpouring of emotion from people, because for those of us at Sport Palace, we've waited all our life for it. And, you know, I think, Shaun, I can't speak for other clubs, but because we've been so close, because we've tasted it, you know, I remember walking into West Ham when we played them recently, and it did just feel like we finally arrived as a football club. You know, all of these clubs that have got a trophy to their name, all of these clubs that I watched win an FA Cup, you know, and we'll always have that, you know, we'll always have that memory. You know, suddenly we were part of that group, you know, and it kind of, I guess it validated a lot of what I've been doing for the last 15 years, you know, and it felt good in that way. And all I remember thinking towards the end of the game was, I mean, if you remember, I think in 1990, I don't know, it was 12 minutes before the end, maybe even closer. I think it was 8 minutes before the end when they equalised in 2016. So I just thought, it can't happen again. You know, this must be the time where we get through the last 10 minutes or whatever the injury time was. And we did. And then to go on and win the Community Shield afterwards was really icing on the cake.
Well, it's interesting that about the Community Shield, because some people say, oh, just pre-season friendly. Others treat it very seriously. We've talked on this show before about how Jose Mourinho counted it as a major trophy, and he thought it was really important to Chelsea's development that they should win the Community Shield. And you, Palace, really put it in that day, and it felt like you were building on the FA Cup success to bring you into this season. And of course, you've started this season very well, so it was hugely important.
They do look good side by side. You know, that gives it a bit more heft, you know, when you've got two of them. I mean, look, it's incredible. And, you know, this is in the end, football is about the players and the staff and the manager. You know, all we can do, all I can do, is create the conditions where they can be successful. Yes, recruitment's important. Yeah, all those things are important, but in the end, it's, you know, 15 guys or however many people, you know, including the subs and the manager and the coaches that have to deliver on the day. You know, they're the ones that have to break through that glass ceiling. They're the ones that in those really difficult moments. And when we talk about difficult moments, I keep going back to JP hitting the post, the outside of the post in the semi-final against Villa. For the 55 years that I can remember supporting Palace, that moment at 1-0 up would have been a defining moment of a game that we probably would have lost in our history. We would have hit the post. Our fans would have sank a little bit. That would have transmitted to the players. In the next 10 minutes, maybe we'd have gone 1-1 and then a second goal. We'd have had a valiant, rally at the end of the game, but probably, come out as losers. And because of the belief system that Oliver's built, because of the players' belief system, because of that's transmitted to the fans. And if you notice, the fans didn't skip a beat at that point. They didn't skip a beat, and within not long we were 2-0 up. Even though we'd missed the penalty. So it's really a testament to the players and to the manager and how well they've done.
And of course, when the full-time whistle went in the FA Cup final, did you think, oh, great, we're in the Europa League, brilliant, off we go to that. And then, of course, you get the blow that you've got to go in the Conference League and all the ramifications of that. And a summer where you couldn't totally bask in the glory because you had all this going on in the background.
Yeah, it was unfortunate, wasn't it? And, the whole thing is a pretty sorry episode, really. I look back on it and I think in the end, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Look, we just got to look positively. We're in the Conference League. We're excited to be in the Conference League. We wished we'd been in the Europa League, but we've put it behind us really now. I think, look, UEFA have got to look at the rules that they've implemented and the way they communicate them. I don't think that they're sensible rules. There is a huge irony in that, I don't really believe in multi-club. I don't really want to be a part of it. And we never did anything, with that club. So it seems an extraordinary decision. And of course, everybody feels like if it wasn't, we were just the right sort of size club you can make an example of, weren't we? We were just the right, enough that maybe it puts people off not conforming in the future. But the general feeling is if we were a bigger club, they would have found a way. That's what.
So you don't think Man United would have been kicked out of the Europa League and put in the conference?
I think they probably would have been more proactive. Look, I don't want to get into the weeds of it all, but on their kind of indicators of decisive influence, whether somebody had decisive influence, our view was it should be factual whether they do, right? But their view was that you fall foul of these indicators, and probably you do. If you're director of two clubs, then there's decisive influence. But I think that there was latitude showed to other clubs. It's interesting. It was an interesting process to go through. If you think about at UEFA, they really decide. They just have a small committee and they decide. You have a tiny little hearing, and they decide what's going to happen. And then after that, you can go to CAS, which was really a court that was designed for doping tests. It isn't. It's a court that is. There's no real process around it. It's just a day. You go and state your case. They've pretty much decided before you go, I think. Compare that to the Premier League process where you go into a full-on judicial process that takes years and, we know where we are with that at the moment. So it's an interesting, because probably somewhere between the two there's the right answer. But, it does feel that we were a bit hardly done by.
Well, you've probably got more chance of winning the Conference League than the Europa League. So therefore, it might be a benefit in the end.
Exactly. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Let's hope so.
Quite so. Next up on Sunday Edition with Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter and our special guest Steve Parish, we'll be quizzing him on his star players. About how important Oliver Glasner is to Palace. And I think there were some concerns during the summer that he maybe was looking at pastures new, or he wasn't quite happy with some of the transfer decisions that were being made. I mean, were you worried? Because he came out quite stridently at times, it seemed to me. Challenging you, maybe?
Well, he's not saying anything that he's not saying to me. I mean, you know, you guys put a microphone in front of these people every Thursday, you know, and you question them. I've these things are obvious issues that happen in football clubs. I think that you are discussing, debating, learning, listening, putting your foot down, all at various different times, right? If you're in my position, I think Oliver's a brilliant guy. I think he's a sensational manager, and his opinion is extremely important to the football club, and what he thinks is something that we take very seriously. Certainly I take very seriously. And, you know, will we look back on things and adapt what we do? Absolutely, in future.
His contract's up in the summer. Early talks going?
Yeah, we've had some early conversations. I mean, you know, look, we would love to keep Oliver. You know, we're building something. I think for Oliver, you know, it's about the conditions being right. You know, it's about everything being in a way that he enjoys his work, you know, and he finds the conditions favourable to achieve. Oliver wants to win things, you know, he makes no secret of that. That's what he's in football for. You know, he's in football for those days where we give all that pleasure to the fans, and we do as well. So, you know, if we can align those interests, then hopefully we can make something happen.
You say he says things to us, which the same things to us that he says to you. But I mean, it seemed that there was a sticking point maybe over Gahey in the summer, that he really wanted him to stay, but you knew that he could end up leaving for free at the end of this season.
Yeah, I don't think that's a fairly obvious. Yeah, you know, it's a difficult decision.
I agree.
Right? It's as simple as that. It's a difficult decision. It's not, you know, these things are never black and white. You know, I decided in the end that, based on the advice that I got, and with what I think, you know, that we would have a better season if we kept Mark. You know, we don't guess about these things. And if you look at it rationally, if you look at what it's worth per place in the Premier League, the fact that we're in the European Conference League for the first time in our history, this is a fairly unusual set of circumstances, right, in which to keep a player. You know, if we were fighting between the difference of, you know, 10th and 14th, if that was going to be the difference between keeping Mark and letting Mark go, then probably we would have said, right, you know, we should take the money. You know, we should take the money. We've got JD who's come in, you know, who's going to develop as a player, we hope. We've got Chaddy coming back from injury. Hopefully that, you know, we'll be okay. You know, we should be okay, and that there's no big loss. But with the Conference League, with the, you know, the way that we want to fight this season, maybe to finish in the top half of the league for the first time, you know, we felt it was a good decision to keep Mark. We've got Chaddy coming back, hopefully in October. So in theory, you know, we could get to a place where we don't need to buy one to replace Mark if we keep him all season.
There is talk in the papers today Adam Wharton possibly going to Manchester United. Do you worry about that possibility? I mean, you know, you have Eze did leave. He went to Arsenal, so are Palace fans right to be worried that Adam Wharton could leave?
Look, I think Adam at some point will want to play, you know, either in the Champions League with us, if we could make that happen, or probably with another club. You know, he's an extraordinary talent. I think right now, and I can't speak for Adam, but I think he's focused on his time at Crystal Palace. He had a broken season last season with the groin issues that he had that a lot of young players get. I think this season he's, you know, completely focused on putting the games in, you know, getting in the England squad, being a regular for us, you know, and making sure that, you know, he can show that, you know, Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, you know, it's a difficult games programme for us right now. So, you know, I think he's very committed to the club, and the you know, I don't know where all this stuff comes from.
Well, there's no smoke without fire, Steve, is there? Surely.
Well, I mean, if Manchester United want Adam Wharton, you know, that's nothing, you know, surprising really about that, you know. The fact of the matter is he's got a long contract to run. There's no pressure on us to do it, and I don't think there's any real pressure from the player either. So,
what about with Eze? What was behind the decision to let him leave in the end?
I think that, you know, he'd been sensational for the club. We have. I mean, I don't know if most football clubs feel this, but we have just such a great bunch of lads. I mean, they really are a special group, and you know, I've never had a bad group, you know, so when I say that really does elevate them amongst some incredible people. And he's a special guy in a special group, and he's given us a lot. And when he got, I think he's 27, you know, he had that Achilles injury that put him back a year, so probably would have been looking to go a year sooner. And he'd achieved so much with us, and he wanted to further his career. You know, this is a natural progression. You know, everybody wants to do that in their life. You know, they've got very short careers, so we were able to facilitate him going to the club that he wanted to go to. So it was a very happy ending for everybody.
Were you surprised, honoured, delighted that Crystal Palace had the most club representation in the England squad last summer? You had 4 players, and you could have had a 5th with Tyreek Mitchell, given his form at the time. What does that say about your recruitment of good characters and also player development?
Yeah, I mean, I think it says a lot about that. I think it's probably, you know, it's a little bit concerning now for England that, if you look around Europe, though, you know, the days of 8 Bayern Munich players playing for Germany, you know, are gone, right? You know, the days of 8 Liverpool players and a couple of Man United players, or 8 Man, you know, playing for England are gone. So I think that, you know, it's excellent for. I was so proud. I mean, if there was 2 things I wanted to do when I came into football, it was for Crystal Palace to win something and in some way help the England team. And you know, Gareth will tell you for years I've spoken to him about that 6th position. You know, that we've never really had one in England that replicates what, you know, the Spanish or the Italian 6s can do. You know, their willingness to take the ball in tight spaces, you know, and to break free from there and take so many players out of the play so that you can't really press them. So, you know, being able to be part of developing players that might help an England team win something, you know, something that we all care so passionately about, is incredible for us to be able to do as a football club. I think that, you know, we do just have to look at, you know, the amount of English players that are playing in the Premier League, what the academy system is producing. Post-Brexit, the Premier League first teams have really done well post-Brexit, because it's opened up the whole world to us of players, and you can see it's just a much more cosmopolitan league, and that's driving our overseas television revenues, and it's driving up the quality of the Premier League. In the academies, because we can't get anybody under 18 from Europe anymore, it's becoming very difficult to get the games programme to be as good as it was. And I think the gulf between under 21 football and first team football is so big now and becoming so difficult for people to bridge. And if you ally that to the fact that the bigger teams are hoovering up the English talent into their academies, you've got this kind of mismatch of quality between 2 or 3 teams' academies and everybody else's. So it is great for us, but there are some sort of warning signs underlying that as well.
But if we take your argument to its full extent, that means B teams.
But I just don't think that you'll be able to have B teams. I don't know what the solution is. I think, you know, the FA and everybody, you know, we need to work through it, because a really good England team and developing good English players is so important for all of us. And I'm sure we will do that. There's no real big alarm bells ringing yet, but we've just got to be a bit careful.
This is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT with Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter, and our special guest Steve Parish, who stays with us to talk club ownership next. Yeah, this is Sunday Edition on talkSPORT with myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter, and we're in the company of Steve Parish, Crystal Palace chairman and co-owner, who's actually nipping off to the NFL game soon. And Steve, with that in mind, they play, obviously, some of their fixtures in this country and around Europe. Do you worry, or do you not? Does it not bother you that with the proliferation of American owners we're getting into the Premier League, that one day we could end up with our fixtures being played in the US?
No.
Great. That's what I wanted to hear.
Listen, I think because why would we do it?
Why do the NFL do it?
Well, I think the NFL do it because they need to grow the game internationally. I mean, if you look at, it's a massive game in the US. It has the biggest broadcast deal, I think, in the world. From a single market, but relatively low. Broadcast media money from other places in the world. It isn't a game that's really played, in other places in the world. So. They bring it. It's very, very difficult and very expensive to get a ticket. If you go there, so they bring it. On a roadshow, and I think it works for them. And I think it helps them grow the game and it grows the interest in the game. I don't want to be complacent, but we don't really need to do that. And of course, you can't recreate the experience of a Premier League ground in any of these places. We see this from the friendly things that we do around America. I think they're good promotional things, but then that's not a Premier League game. That's not the atmosphere that you get at a Premier League game. That's not what makes it unique. So, I would say if anybody wants to come and experience it, come to a Premier League game. I'm sure you can find a way to get a ticket. I don't see us doing it. I can see the reason La Liga are trying to do it. The Premier League and the Premier League exec are doing such an outstanding job, in media rights around the world, that along with the Champions League, UCC, really, it's crushing everybody else's media income. There is only so much media money in the world, and it's a fight for share of that media income. And this is the thing. The Premier League's real challenges are, UCC, Club World Cup. These are the things that are our competitors. Without being in any way complacent, we really are light years ahead of other European leagues in terms of revenue, and I don't think there's anything to be gained by doing it.
Steve, it's really encouraging to hear you saying that we won't have a 39th game, we won't have a games abroad, but would your American co-investors echo those sentiments, and would American owners at other clubs?
Look, I think that, if you look at the Liverpool owners, who I think are brilliant, they've learned every single bit about the heritage of football and Liverpool and all of those things.
Super League?
Yeah, of course. Look, whether you like it or not, I think UEFA's grip on that competition is going. I mean, we've seen this week, they're not called the ECA anymore, are they? The ECF or something they're called. We've seen, I think, this week, in their gathering, that UEFA's grip on all of that stuff. And to be honest, I don't agree with the format of the Super League and no qualification. For clubs like us or other clubs, the meritocracy has to be retained. But who runs the competition? I can understand, having been in UEFA's process, a little bit what these clubs, are complaining about. And I think that we will see. This is a challenge for the new regulator as well, because there are big global shifts going on. I mean, in the end, these things get sucked up towards the money. We saw it with the Club World Cup. We've seen it with the expansion of the Champions League and the Europa League and Conference League. And I think that we are going to see a two-speed game in that effect. And I think there's probably very little we can do to stop it.
Henry did his interview with the regulator, which you just touched on there, David Cogan. Were you in favour of having a regulator? And now we've got one, what do you want to see them do regarding club ownership, probably?
Look, I wasn't in favour of it, but they're here now, but they've got big challenges. I think it's a very difficult job to do. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we over-regulate in this country and in Europe everything, which is why we've got a bit of a moribund economy. 9 of the 10 biggest companies in the world are in America, and they're probably all less than 50 years old. And we regulate everything out of existence. So, look, on the one hand, yes, you've seen it from this transfer market, 3 billion in a single transfer market. How long have we been saying it's all unsustainable and it can't go on? Clubs are spending too much money. And of course, that's true. And equally what's true is it's always been thus. And we have brought massive investment into this country in the Premier League. And that has undoubtedly driven the growth of the Premier League over other leagues. What league are you going to invest in? Are you going to invest in the Premier League, where you can take an Aston Villa into the Champions League, or you're going to invest in La Liga, where the financial constraints are so harsh that it's basically all pinned where it is. And that's really the challenge for David and his group is to make sure that, you know, if you look at it through one lens and just say, oh, we've got to look at every eventuality where a club could possibly get into trouble, I fear that you'll put such draconian measures in place that you'll just pin everybody where they are and you'll remove all the aspiration from football. And we know we're constantly arguing about these things. You know, is PSR too restrictive? Is it not restrictive enough? You know, what's the right balance between money wins everything and allowing people to have some aspiration that aren't in the place to spend as much money as everybody else? So it's a big, big, big challenge. It's another force in football that we'll have to see play out and see what it does.
Should he be getting involved in Manchester City and this 115, 130 charges, which seems to have dragged on forever? And are you getting frustrated with it as well?
Well, of course I'm getting frustrated with it because, you know, we all talk about it too much. You know, we need to put it behind us if we can. And as I just touched on, you know, maybe somewhere between what UEFA do and what we've locked ourselves into, which is a full-on judicial process with all the power of the law and competition law coming into play and endless motions to delay and, you know, all the rest of it. Maybe there's a happy medium in between. And maybe in the fullness of time, these are the things that the regulator can help us with. You know, they can help us with legislating so that we can have a simpler but fair process.
Henry?
Fan engagement, I mean, there's going to be a lot of talk about that this week. I mean, you've always engaged with fans because you're a fan yourself. Crystal Palace aren't really an issue on that perspective. But actually, there are a lot of clubs who almost keep fans at arm's length. Is that something the regulator can help with?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, we've got these fan advisory panels now, I think, talking about things like ticket prices. You know, it's difficult for me because we've got such brilliant fans. You know, I obviously online you can find people that, but if I walk around the stadium or, you know, talk to any supporters or walk down the street, you know, there's nothing but support for me and for the team and for the players. So, you know, I feel like we're in a very good place with it. I feel for people that aren't. There's an ebb and flow about being successful in football. Not everybody can be successful all of the time. And of course, there's an element about football that it brings all your emotions to it. You know, people like to complain sometimes about their football club, and it's kind of part of it, right? And so, yes, the deeper that we can get the engagement, though, with fans, the more that we can take them on board and bring them on the journey with us, obviously, you know, the easier it is.
But you are an exception. I can't imagine the Glazers have that sort of relationship with the fans.
No, listen, I was born in the area, wasn't I? You know, and I'm very lucky with the relationship that I've got with the vast majority of them. But, you know, I'm sure everybody else can have that. I think the Liverpool owners have got a fantastic relationship with the fans there. You know, they've made some mistakes, haven't they, over the years? They've quickly rectified them, and they do an outstanding job. You know, and so I think it's possible to do. You know, it's not difficult. You just have to take into account people's views and understand where they're coming from.
I'm glad you brought up ticket prices because it's a contentious area with all fans in this country, throughout the world. We've got quite a few Crystal Palace fans who work in this building who think 40 quid to go to the Conference League against AK Athens is too much. I mean, in the world scheme of things, with ticket prices, it probably doesn't sound that much, but if you're taking a family of 4 or 3, it's a lot. How do you decide on ticket prices, and do you think it needs to be looked at again?
Well, I think, look, first of all, I'd say we've got some of the lowest ticket prices in the league generally. I mean, I think you can probably get a season ticket in a decent part of the ground for, I don't know, 20 quid a game. You know? So I think...
What, for an adult?
I think it's not much more than that with the discount, you know, that you get if you get the early bird ticket. You know, I'd have to check into that, but I don't think it's much more than that. So I think we offer incredible value, you know, in the stadium. This is the first time we've ever played in Europe. You know, we think it's a big occasion. I think it's Larnaca. It's not AK Athens. I think it's a separate team. But
sorry, is it?
Yeah.
Forgive me.
No worries. But so, look, we priced it based on the occasion. You know, we think it's the first game. We don't think that it's a particularly onerous price. I mean, 40 quid now, what can you get for 40 quid in terms of entertainment? You know, if you go to the cinema, time you buy a ticket and a bag of popcorn, you know, you pay that. It is expensive opening these stadiums. And, you know, the Conference League isn't as lucrative, obviously, as the Europa League that we would have been in from a media point of view. So we'll see how it goes. If the market tells us, you know, it's too much money, and we're totally aware of, you know, what it costs families, particularly to travel to away games, to some of these away games, and we really appreciate everybody's support. So it's obviously something we'll keep under review.
When Palace supporters knew you were coming on, one of the main things they wanted to know about what is happening with the main stand.
So fingers crossed, they'll see some real physical progress in January. We've been a little bit delayed with things around buying the houses we've got to buy and just some changes. We've actually changed a lot of the construction from all concrete, mainly concrete, to mainly steel. And that's been a bit of a sea change, but it saved us a significant sum of money. So it was worth doing that work. We've got a new company that are running a construction project. So it's all systems go. What's really good now with Woody on board, Woody's been brilliant. As a shareholder group, everybody's completely aligned that this is something that has to happen for the football club. It's completely, and we went to Everton Stadium, which was amazing. Hats off to them. They've done an amazing job. I thought that Goodison was a fantastic advantage for those guys. When you went and played there, it was a real cauldron, real difficult place to play. And I wouldn't say it's exactly as intimidating, but it's pretty good for a big stadium. They've done a really good job. So, we need to do it. It's an absolute must. And everybody now on the shareholder group is committed to doing it. So hopefully in January, there's lots of things going on. Things are being moved, power stations, dressing rooms being built. So there's a lot of things on maybe the fans can't see. So it has been going forwards. But the real physical things being demolished, etc., will start happening in January.
Did you ever think of moving?
When I first arrived, we looked at Crystal Palace National Sports Centre. But as everybody knows, getting planning in this country is extremely difficult, and it's not easy to do it where you are. But if you're on an existing site and an existing stadium, there's a lot less objections because people have already come there for 19 times a season plus cup games, etc. So I think it's easier to do it where we are. It would be a huge delay if we were to start looking at somewhere else now.
Steve, I know you want to rush off to the NFL in a minute, but just before you go, you touched on the fact, can you get in the Champions League this season? Mateta, who's a striker who's had a pretty good couple of seasons, wants to play in the Champions League, believes he can play in the Champions League. Can he do that with Crystal Palace?
Well, firstly, congratulations on JP and his cap for France. Yeah. He's one of the most hard-working footballers I've ever met. He makes the best of himself every single day. I've never seen him have a day when he's negative. You see him on the football pitch getting the crowd going. He's such a positive character.
And a late developer.
And he's done an amazing job getting himself into the French team, which is a huge ambition of his. So we're so proud of him. We're so pleased for everything he's done. Look, we would have to have a worldy season, for it to happen. Obviously, a lot of things would have to go in our favour. But in terms of a Premier League season, we've never really had that. I've always felt that we've never had, a lot of the rub of the green. It didn't start well with that goal at Chelsea, which I still can't quite get over, this rule they suddenly invented from nowhere. But look, we're going to try and finish as high up the league as we can, and we're going to try and support Oliver in every way that we possibly can to do that.
Steve Parish, brilliant to have you in. Thanks very much. We're pestering you again for next season. Hope you enjoy the NFL. That was Steve Parish, Crystal Palace chairman and co-owner. Thank you very much. Steve, to finish on Sunday edition, we look ahead to England's clash against Latvia on Tuesday night, which is live on talkSPORT. It's the final part of Sunday Edition with myself, Shaun, Custis and Henry Winter, where we have been in the company of Steve Parish, the Crystal Palace chairman and co-owner, who's now zipped off to the NFL because he loves a bit of American football. But the good news that he had for us, Henry, was that he doesn't anticipate Premier League games ever going abroad in a way the NFL bring their game to our country.
And he made very cogent arguments with heart and head about why they shouldn't go overseas. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if some of the American owners at other clubs think that way. But actually, from a sporting integrity perspective, I'm so glad that it sounds like they're not going to go overseas. And Richard Masters, in fairness, has actually sort of spoken, certainly last season, that he couldn't sit. But it's interesting, I was talking to some members of the Arsenal supporters group in the United States, and they said, why are you lot getting so concerned over your end about games going over their side of the pond? Actually, what they want to do is come over and go to the Emirates. Manchester United fans in Atlanta or wherever want to go to Old Trafford to experience.
We don't want them coming to take the tickets, which we want for local people.
I know. Well, I agree with that. But have you been to a Premier League game recently? I mean, that is happening. But the important thing is that the games aren't being played overseas because it sacrifices home advantage, and that impinges the sporting integrity of an amazing competition.
No, it was heartening to hear. I haven't heard it said out quite so stridently. I think we've been spooked by La Liga, playing a game out there in December, isn't it? And a bit worried.
I think that the Spanish and the Italians have been spooked long term by the Premier League and the money that they're making. They think they've got to go and do this.
What about what he had to say about Glasner and the other players who are there at Palace, who Palace fans might worry could leave?
I like the way that he talks about them as players and as assets, but also about people as well. And you can see he's got that sort of human engagement. And I think that connection that he's got with Oliver Glasner plays out well. I mean, Glasner knows if he goes to another club, he won't have that sort of relationship with a board and a co-owner, chairman, as he does with Parish.
There were clearly some issues laid out on the table between them, though, in the summer, wasn't there?
Absolutely, there were some issues, but I think it's quite good because they are both not outspoken, but they speak their mind. So you can see them sort of talking over a table, and they don't dance around subjects. They absolutely get on with things. Be interesting to see if there's another Liverpool bid for Gay in January, whether that all kicks on again. But look, Glasner's in a very strong position. But I just hope he signs a new contract and stays there longer term, because it's brilliant. One thing we didn't ask him is how Glasner's managed to get 3-4-2-1 working, where it's slightly less successful at Old Trafford.
We didn't get round to that. However, another manager who's making things work, I think, is Tuchel. With England, they play Latvia, which is live on talkSPORT on Tuesday in a World Cup qualifier. What are you expecting from England? Do you want to see some changes in the team?
I don't think we will, because I think that he is bedding in a team. We might see one or sort of two tweaks at the back. Stones' fitness, Stones, a fit Stones is an absolute guaranteed starter alongside Crystal Palace's Mark Gay. Be interesting to see what he does at fullback, whether Miles Lewis-Skelly comes in as well. I mean, Jed Spence did
very well,
superbly, and he can play right and left. I mean, I think your boy Livramento, longer term, he will go in there. But I think that actually that the side is settling in, beginning to bed in. I mean, he has opportunities to rest Jordan Pickford and bring in Crystal Palace's Dean Henderson, but Pickford, he's just doing superbly, and he's playing in game after game, so that will continue. I imagine Harry Kane, if it will come back in.
I'm sure he fancied a bit of go at Wales the other night. Was a bit frustrated when he didn't.
But that was vaguely injury related.
Yeah, it was vaguely injury. I've been intrigued by all the Pickford features this week, because he's a player who has been brilliant for England. I mean, throughout his time, you wouldn't replace him. Yet, I hesitate to say this, one of the really big clubs in Europe has never gone from, like Man United haven't made an effort to try and sign him, for instance.
Yeah, and he would be good. I mean, maybe people sort of looked at him and just sort of thought,
what?
Well, that's what I don't understand.
The mistakes he makes, apart from taking Virgil van Dijk out.
That was poor. That was poor. Distribution, I think, is improved. Good. Takes a penalty as well as saves penalties.
So why not? Explain. Why?
Well, it's a really good point. Maybe it's because he's been at Everton and maybe there's sort of less focus on them. I don't know. It's a bit harsh on Everton. I think he's outstanding. I think there's been a lot of looking at going overseas for goalkeepers because they are maybe 10 million quid cheaper.
But he's certainly going to be around our number one for good. Is there a backup, just quickly, for him?
Dean Henderson. I think Dean Henderson's been outstanding.
We've got a better backup in goal than we have up front for Harry Kane.
Well, that's the issue. There is a drop-off between 1 and 2 up front.
Are you expecting an easy win then? Tuesday?
Not an easy win, but I expect them to go through. But look, England do get through qualifying.
Was it Andorra?
Yeah, but England get through qualifying. Do you remember we sailed through qualifying under Capello and then spanked South Africa out?
I still remember their last time they lost a World Cup qualifier. What was that? Ukraine away.
Oh right, okay.
1-0.
Right,
and it was a dead rubber. So
But look, I think Tuchel is so impressive. I'm an admirer of his, but he cannot be judged properly until the quarterfinal of the World Cup.
Indeed. But we look forward to an England win against Latvia, a Wales win against Belgium, a Scotland win against Belarus today. Come on, all the home nations. That's it for Sunday Edition for this week. Up next, it's the warm-up with Max Rushton and Barry Glendinning.